Hey friends, welcome to Your Story Matters podcast. My name is Michaela, and I am so happy you're here. My hope for this show is that we experience the power of storytelling and understand that we are the main characters in our story so that we can live as our truly authentic selves. You're in the right place to hear real stories that will challenge, inspire, and encourage you on your personal growth journey. I hope you enjoy. Today on the show is Alexander Oxford. Alex is the founder of NLP in practice and the Mind Paradigm. For more than 25 years, he has trained coaches, therapists, health professionals, practitioners, and mentors to master the art of communication, human behavior, and lasting transformation. His work goes far beyond teaching NLP techniques. Alex helps people transform from skilled practitioners into influential mentors who create ripple effects in the lives of others. By mastering their internal signal, embodying authentic leadership, and communicating with clarity and purpose, his students learn to inspire change rather than simply deliver information. Through his unique integration of practical NLP, mentoring, communication, and personal mastery, Alex equips people to build thriving practices, develop confident leadership, and become the kind of mentor others naturally trust, follow, and remember. His mission is to create a new generation of transformational mentors who don't just change individual lives, they help shape stronger communities and a more conscious future. Here's our conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Your Story Matters podcast. I'm so happy that you've taken time out of your day to spend it with me, and I'm equally happy to be chatting with my new friend across the pond, as I love to say. Alexander Oxford is here today. Alex, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Michaela. I'm really looking forward to today.
I am just surprised through this show how many Aussies I get to talk to, and it is brilliant. I think I mentioned this probably... I don't even know when I mentioned it, but I know I've sprinkled it in here and there. The reason I love podcasting so much is that I get to chat with people from all over the world, and a lot of them are Australians. And I'm like, I would have never in my life probably met any Aussie any other way, maybe except walking into each other, crossing paths on the street. But this is just so cool to see the richness of the world, knowing that no matter where we are, where we come from, we're all kind of going through the same things or can relate on so many different levels to a lot of things. But we're narrowing down from universally to you today, Alex. So take it away and share with us, what is your story?
Yes. So Michaela, my story goes back to, I guess it's all about I started being in my career due to my debilitation when I was about 12 years old. And that's where, for me, everything changed in my life. Everything started, and my inquisitive mind started to emerge. And it all happened when I went to play my first stroke in squash, and my body just completely seized up. I turned as white as a ghost, and my friend that was right next to me thought I was possessed. It was freaking out, thinking, what is going on? Because it just turned how pale I turned, and I just couldn't move. So he got the teacher at the time, and they picked me up, put me in the back of the station wagon, because back then we could do that. And they took me home and placed me on the couch. And it was just my mum home. There was nobody else. My dad was at work. And here I was, completely stuck, not knowing how I was going to get to the bathroom. Okay? And this is where the whole mindset, the whole paradigm just completely turned upside down, because I was persistent. I needed to go to the bathroom. I couldn't rely on my mum because she had arthritis all over her body. I couldn't ask my dad because he was at work. There was nobody else around. So somehow I got myself on my hands and knees, and I always remember how it was just riddled with pain. But at the same time, there was a whole chemical cocktail that my body released. So I was in pain at the same time. I was absolutely in laughter, crawling to the bathroom. And I always remember what happened. There was a pivotal moment in my life where my mind started saying, I need to get control of my life. I need to get strong. Right now, I will do whatever it takes to take control of my life again, but in a way that I've never done before. And I need people to support me in doing this. And I always remember that mantra just going all the way to the bathroom. And I got myself there, and when my dad got home, they brought me to the hospital. So I'm very grateful that I went through that massive paradigm shift, because I started becoming a very inquisitive kid. So much so that I was was a big pain to a lot of adults because the questions I asked weren't really questions that they asked for themselves. Does that make sense? So you probably
Yep.
find that within yourself, that how many people just don't ask questions, so they just take on board what's told.
Yeah.
And so when I went to the hospital and they did all the procedures to come up with a diagnosis, all they could offer is a solution of painkillers, and my mind just did not accept that. I'm not here to get rid of my pain. I'm here to get stronger. I'm here to recover. How can you help me with that? And I wasn't getting those answers from the doctor at the time. So I let go of that and started my research on what is happening with me. If you're only going to diagnose me to give me a drug, well, that makes no sense to me. I want a solution. I want to find out what is really going on and where does my body actually need help to get the outcomes that I want. And for me, that made total sense. So I had to find a way to, or a team of people to help me with that. And I was just so lucky that in my life, I had an uncle that was involved in body work. And they used to call him, or we used to call him, the hands of gold. And I didn't know why, because I didn't exactly knew what he did until I did. And wow, he was my first mentor in the body work that I do and teach today, and also ended up becoming that, also the founder of the Mind Paradigm, because it took me to a whole different spiral of not just body work, but deep into what's happening at the unconscious level. So that's how the whole story began, and it was pretty amazing. It was the first time anyone would actually mention the word fascia. And I'm quite sure today more and more people are talking about fascia. And that's where I started divulging into the world of fascia, because my uncle was talking about how the muscles work, how the fascia works, and that most people are trying to loosen things. And the way he explained it, it was the first person to actually make sense. And it took me as I said, it took me into a spiral of asking more and more and more questions into understanding how the body works. Now, this led to me turning into a practitioner myself, but I had no inclination during my teenage years to actually be a practitioner. So when someone said to you, what did you want to be? I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. So it just came at 20, like, what is it that I like to do? Well, this is what I love doing. I'm just researching it by default. So I went down that path. I went down the path of firstly remedial massage, which when I started to learn it, most of the curriculum had nothing to do with the mentors that I was with between the age of 12 and 20. Most of them had a pattern of understanding muscles and fascia all the way through, and the way they were explaining the body, that the body had this intelligence within itself, and it's always attempting to correct itself. It's always attempting to heal itself. All we need to do is most of the times get out of the way or help what's in the way, and then let the body do the healing. However, a lot of this stuff doesn't get taught in the curriculum in a lot of schools. So I was very lucky within the school to have great mentors, but I learnt from them, not in the school, but outside of school. Okay. They, especially one Dennis, one of the teachers, he was like, every time he would teach me something, he goes, I didn't teach you that. Okay. That didn't happen in this class. All right. So my curious mind was like, I need to go and see him at his practice to see what he really does. And that's what I did. And that's what I kept doing, between 12 and 20. That's what I always did. Every time someone mentioned how good someone was, I would go there, experience what they did, and then by default, they would mentor me in answering the questions that people just didn't answer. And it just showed me how vital it is to have a mentor in life, all throughout your life. You need someone to guide you through. And I remember the years that I didn't have mentors, and I felt quite lost because I didn't know what my next journey was. And so that's my story in a nutshell in regards to how I got to that place of developing something called spinophractic massage, and also being the founder of the Mind Paradigm and what I like to call the Mentors Academy, because that's what it all led me to keep asking those questions. It just showed me how many gaps there were in the market. Okay, I'm not sure if you found that sort of experience as well, Michaela, in your journey, but the gaps always show up when you ask questions. So the answers always came up with more questions for me. It was never like a definitive answer. It was always more the next question. And then I found, as I was working through understanding the mind paradigm, more and more mentors were saying the same thing. It's like great questions lead to more questions, and they keep leading to more questions. And so that's where I needed to develop something that was another gap in the market, which is the mind paradigm. And the way I found that is back in 2000, I trained with an amazing guy called Tad James, who was the founder of something called timeline therapy. I'm quite sure many people have heard of that, and many people haven't. And that was discovered while I was looking into when my body was almost at a point where it was fully recovered. There was still something there. And when myofascial release was talking about trapped emotions in the fascia, this again sparked my curiosity in finding out, well, if these emotions are in the fascia and they come from trauma, well, where's the cause of that? That's obviously the fascia is holding it, but where is the cause of that holding? And then that's where I started to discover the unconscious mind and being able to deal with traumas. And that's where I got into neurolinguistic programming and hypnotherapy. And I'm just very grateful that timeline therapy was part of that, because it started talking about emotions and understanding how emotions are trapped, and therefore what we can do to release those emotions and therefore let go of that trauma. And then when I went through that, that was like the last domain that I needed to uncover for myself, because part of that growing up as a kid, one thing that I always would see in people's eyes and in people's faces was sadness. Regardless of how happy they were, regardless of anything else, I would always see sadness. So I was convinced that everybody was sad and they were just faking it, right? Until I learned perception is projection. So you start seeing that everywhere you look, all you're seeing is your mirror. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing, because when I resolved that sadness, I couldn't see it anymore. Every time I looked at people's faces, my perception changes. It's almost like I just stepped into a completely different frequency and started seeing things in a very, very different way. And I need to know more of this. And so that's how I got into developing spinophractic massage, which was really understanding that your central nervous system is all about protecting itself and starts to adapt based on the experiences we go through in our life. The central nervous system will then adapt based on that perception, and therefore the whole body then adapts into what the central nervous system has been telling it, which comes from the paradigm in which we're living in. And that was a pretty amazing thing. So by understanding that, we can track to the causes of situations instead of just dealing with symptoms and effects. Does that make sense, Michaela?
Perfect sense, yes.
Any other questions in regards to everything I've said? You want me to keep going?
No, keep going. This is your show. I just facilitate it.
Fantastic. So when spinophractic massage was created, and this was back in 2007, I went through a stage where I was doing remedial massage. But I was very frustrated because the model that was taught to me in regards to how to work with clients was in a way a bit limiting, because the way I was learning as a teenager, I could pinpoint through palpation where to go pretty quickly. So in 2003, this was 10 years after during my career, I was at a stage where I'm like, I'm just going to focus on my coaching with NLP, hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, and coaching and also teaching. And I have to let go of this side of of my body work, because the way I was working, I couldn't get my head around how to work the way I wanted to. And so therefore, when you're in a plateau, when you're in a situation and you're asking questions, things come up. It's pretty interesting how you attract things into your life. And this is where I attracted my dear friend, Tito. Now I attracted him in 2003, and he loved the way I worked and found things. And I only worked with him for a few minutes, and he just loved me continuing to do that, because for me, the effectiveness of my appointments was like 5-10 minutes at the most, and everything else was like filling time. And and it got to the stage that you almost wanted to fall asleep because the rest of it was all mindless, right? So when I met Tito, and I said to him, look, I'm at the stage that, I'm just going to stop doing my body work. And he looks at me in the eyes, you can't do that. I just found you. Right. And so he goes, tell me why do you want to stop? And I told him, because most of the appointments that people are booking in half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, most of my appointments, it's the effectiveness is only 5 to 10 minutes. And he just looks at me straight into my eyes, and he goes, just do what you do. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, everything else that isn't effective, just leave it and just do what you do. I'm like, well, that's only going to take like 5-10 minutes. He goes, well, just do that. And I'm like, well, I was about to quit, so I might as well. Okay. So I put my pen to paper and started looking at what is it, what's the process that I'm doing. And when I did that, I started creating 15-minute appointments in my diary. And this is what really blew me away on just doing what you do, is I was seeing the maximum I was seeing in a week was 25 clients, and I was completely booked out and sore all the time, because a lot of the times in the way that you get taught to do massage can really put a toll on your body. Now, I went from 25 clients to 100 clients a week in only 3.5 days a week.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
And that took me only 12 weeks without any marketing. Now, this blew me away, because I'm thinking to myself, where have I been all these years?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was just, and this is what I mean. Well, what we mean when we say you just have to get away and get out of the way of yourself, because a lot of the time, the way you need to work and who you are and how you need to express yourself in the world is already within you. But there's a lot of noise. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise, and that noise can actually be something great for another person, but for you, it can be just static to your signal. And I call it signal because that's what I coach in today's world. But I could really see it and started modeling that, using the NLP modeling techniques. I could just see, okay, wow, this makes total sense to me now on how right now I'm getting the results that I've always wanted, but never knew these are the results that I truly wanted because there was just so much noise around in regards to how to work, especially in the massage profession. Yeah, the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of broke mindsets in that industry, and it's definitely changing now, which is great to see. More and more people coming out of their shells, that you don't have to work in the way that we've been told. We need to work our individual in our individual way. There's a lot of people call it the authentic self. I like to say that every single one of us our fingerprints are always different. So therefore, your internal signal at its purest is going to be different, but all coherent to everybody else in the world. And the thing is, if you're not expressing it in the way that you need to express it, then you're trying to copy somebody else, or something's getting in the way. You could be, you could be trapped in limiting beliefs about your authenticity and so forth. And that's just the noise getting in the way. And the more I worked with that paradigm of what else now is getting in my way, and so I just kept going down that pathway. So as as I started working this way, something else dropped into my world, which is spinology. And this was really getting into muscle fibers that I never knew existed in the body, in the way that the body's already attempting to correct itself. And this was a pretty amazing thing, because this has always been my journey, is that what is the body attempting to do? So when I was creating my new profession in the way that I was doing it, that when Tito said, just do what you do, the question that came up for me was, okay, so when I'm doing what I'm doing, what is it that I'm doing when I'm doing that?
That's a very important question.
It's a very important question, right? And before I could even answer that, another question came up, was just like, well, that's great that I'm here to find out, what is it that I'm doing when I'm doing what I'm doing. But to do that, I need to find out, well, I'm working with the body. So when the body is doing and expressing what it's doing, what is it really attempting to do for itself? Because then that sharpens what I do. And that's where it's like, well, the body's got its own intelligence. It doesn't just do things because it's bored. It's not self-destructive, as some profession actually see that, the what is a body here to do? The body is here to die. Some professions actually see that. And that makes no sense to me. If you only die once and you live the rest of the time, so the body's always striving to live. If it was just, every time you cut yourself, what is your body doing? It heals it. But every time you're going through anything, your body's always attempting to heal itself. And the only time that it can't is that some kind of external force is greater than the internal forces that your body is attempting to correct itself are. So therefore, that we need that external help, and that's where those practitioners come up. However, that was a lot of noise getting in the way as we're going through healing ourselves. There was so many conflicting information. So when I focused on, okay, what is it that the body is attempting to do for itself? This is where I started getting awesome answers with fascia. So why is the fascia so tight? Because a lot of people think it's muscles that are tight, but it's the fascia that's getting all restricted to be able to protect something in the body. And therefore, I'm like, wow. So when I'm helping the fascia, what is it that I'm doing here? Am I helping it in the way that the body wants to help? Or am I helping it because I think it shouldn't be tight? Okay, so by asking that question, it's like, am I being productive or counterproductive to my methodologies, right? And that's where spinology came into my life, and it was talking about muscle fibers that are working hard to attempt to correct something that we call spinal obtrusions, which is where the body has lost the ability to maintain proper relationships of the bones. Here we are, your body is now recruiting muscle fibers to attempt to restore that joint. So therefore, the central nervous system isn't compromised. We were talking about the noise, that's also noise in your body. So therefore, your body's always going to be working hard to try and firstly protect you from those situations. And that's where the fascia hardens up to protect you. And if you're always consistently in a mental, emotional, physical space that your body has to continuously protect itself from, those patterns now become part of your life, and then becomes a normal thing to have these fascial restrictions all over your body, because your body is now adapted into an environment that it always has to protect itself from. Okay, so it's never one thing. So when I'm doing what I'm doing, what is it that I'm doing? I needed to find out, well, what I'm actually doing here is I'm looking at the body's response to its ability to adapt to the situation that it's in. So therefore, we need to really find out the whole picture of what is this, where is this person in their interpretation of time and space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge thing, because it took my training in NLP and hypnosis and things. I took to a completely different pathway of everything that I feel in this person's body is just a map to their whole. It's not just a part. This is tight and needs to be untightened or whatever, however we get taught these days in regards to parts. It's more than that. This is a whole adaptation of the whole person. And so that's where I worked with people then through breakthroughs in finding out, okay, it's not just a physical path. some of this is an emotional path. So we started working with people in that way. And when I started working in that way, it's like, wow, it's not there anymore. So this pattern that was holding wasn't that it was protecting the body in this way. It was actually an emotion that was trapped in that area, which reflected in the way that they viewed their body, which is another amazing thing. So this is the uncovering, and it hasn't stopped. Like, here I am at 53, and I'm still asking questions, and I haven't stopped asking questions. And it's got to a point where, okay, so now as we're finding more and more and more, how much more is there to uncover? And you find that there's so much more to uncover. And therefore, when do we stop being mentored? When do we stop growing? When do we stop learning? And the thing is, we don't. Our central nervous system is wired for growth. Hence why when we stop, things start to atrophy. The last thing we want is our central nervous system to start to atrophy. And a lot of the times, in the way that society has been placed, the forces of that noise can sometimes be at a point where we're always trying to seek some kind of comfort instead of seeking growth, which is a completely different paradigm. When we go to the gym, the last thing we want to do is go to a weight that's lighter than what we can do. Because it doesn't give growth, it gives it goes the opposite. And I look at life as life is our given. This is the given gym, okay. And what it's here to do is that for life to prevail, it needs to always become stronger. And those obstacles and problems are not actual problems; it's the way. It's a higher set of weights that you have to deal with. And when you go through that, and you go through those failure points, you become stronger and stronger. And that's where NLP calls it failure. There is no failure, there's only feedback, which makes total sense to me, because when you hit a failure point, you've just hit your challenge point in life. It's the way I work with the body. We find a challenge point in the body, and we work through that challenge point, not beyond it where you can break stuff. And we want to go to that and not too light. We want to go right to that challenge point. And same with life. If you go beyond it, you get overwhelmed and you just want to pass out somewhere. However, if you always take your life to that challenge point, and amazing things happen. Amazing things happen.
I have a whole page of notes here, so thank you, Alex. This is a masterclass in and of itself. What do you think is the resistance for us to be aware that mind-body connection and growth is possible? Because there's two groups of people, right? You and I were under the curious umbrella, right? We were the kids that always ask questions. We're always going to. We're never satisfied with the answer. We're like, well, that just opens up a whole door and another can of worms.
Absolutely.
And then there's people who coast, and then people who are complacent.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
what keeps people coasting and complacent?
Yeah.
Instead of that curiosity kind of just sparking adventure in them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is the question I always ask myself as well, but what I found is that somewhere in I like to call it our indoctrination, because a lot of the times the system that we're in doesn't really teach us how to think. It just teaches us what to think, right? So we get in an environment where we have a lot of counter intentions of life. Okay, counter intentions meaning it goes against what we're here to do. So we have limiting beliefs, which is a big one. However, when we go through, and this is a big thing, like we've softened up in today's world, and a lot of people are going to arc up in the way I view this, and that's fine. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to question, and we have softened up our blows that we go through in life. And instead of dealing with the blow, we're dealing with the aftershock. If you keep dealing with the aftershock, the blow is always going to be there. That trauma is not going to go away if all you're focusing on is the post-trauma. Okay. If you get cut in your femoral artery and all you do is wipe off the blood, you're going to die. You have to deal with that. You've got to deal with the trauma of the severed artery. And this is where do you go? Do you go to emergency and they stitch it back up? Okay. However, if all you're focusing on, oh, there's blood, I just need to just deal with the blood, you're dealing with the post-trauma. You're not dealing with the actual wound. And it's the same thing in the emotional sense. If you go through a huge traumatic time, okay, what happens now is that this is where, when I studied people that have gone through the most traumatic things that we can't even imagine, and how much trauma some people have gone through. And someone goes through a little thing and they can't get over it, right? It's a pretty amazing. So what happens at that moment is that people will see an opportunity on how to deal with this trauma and become really, really strong. And they do. They become so strong, way beyond, and they saw it as an opportunity that they never had. Some people, however, and it's all got to do with the indoctrination. Some people will actually now, the emotion that they felt, they fall into and now live their life post-trauma, which is in the emotion instead of in the internal signal. So what happens now is that they're living in the static and the noise of the emotion that was there, that was protecting you. And unfortunately, instead of understanding that the emotions are there, all emotions are, there's no emotion that's negative except for a suppressed and unresolved one. That's the only thing that's negative. All emotions are there to protect us. And they do an amazing job if we let them do their job in protecting us. But once we start living through them, it's like here you are in your path, an emotion has come through, and instead of learning from that emotion, you're now living your life in that emotion. And that's where people start getting hurt, sad, angry, and so forth, because they're living in that. So they're doing the trauma over and over and over and over and over again. But the emotion was there to give us that strength that we needed, to give us that lesson, that learning that we needed, so we can become stronger as individuals. It's like, as I was saying, when you go to the gym, to actually go through it and actually get better results, you have to go through that pain of the body going and screaming. And sometimes it's frustrating when you can't lift it. But if you live through the frustration, you'll stop. It's like, no, I can't do this anymore. If you see frustration as feedback that, yes, I can do better than what I've went through, that's frustration, because you know you can do better. Okay. Then we do. But how many people give up after one or two tries? No, this doesn't work. How many people have come up to me, no, I can't be hypnotized. Well, I agree with you, because the hypnosis that you're currently in is way stronger than any hypnotherapist can give you until you let them. Because we're all living under some kind of trance. And that trance is usually a lump sum of suppressed, that's what I call a negative emotion. It's suppressed and unresolved, limiting beliefs and conflicts that we live in. And if we can deal with those three things, and we start seeing that the things that we're seeing and experiencing most of the time are our projections of these suppressed emotions, limiting beliefs, and parts or conflicts that lie within us. And once we start seeing that, wow, this amazing thing called life is my playground. It's my gym. It's the very thing it's just showing me. It's purely my mirror of showing me where I need to grow, instead of showing me what I shouldn't be doing. It's not here to push you down. It's here to help you grow. And if you can't deal with a certain thing today, right now, it's here to show you that this is where your strength needs to, this is where you need to focus on building up your strength, instead of showing you that you can't do it. Okay. Does that make sense in regards to how people just show away? Because it's indoctrination is, if you can't do it, you can't do it. Don't push too hard. Don't stress yourself over it. We come up with all these things. And, Gary Brecker says it so well, is that, aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. This is how we start breaking down and becoming more atrophy in our muscles, in our central nervous system, and therefore our life, is that all we're looking for is being comfortable, instead of understanding that we're seeking recovery. And when you start, recovery is very different to comfort. You go out there to work, it's not, a lot of the times it's just not comfortable, or, you're dealing with all sorts of different people's paradigms. And then what you want to do is when you finish your work, then you've got to be in a place of recovery. And a lot of times seeking comfort doesn't give you the recovery you need. And that's an amazing, like, I've seen people with all sorts of different shaped spines, and their recovery is being on the couch like this. And that's how and then they wake up and it's like, I can't move. What happened is because they didn't focus on recovery. I'm just too tired. It's comfortable for a second, but staying like that over a period of is not the best thing for us. So is that sort of answer the question there, Michaela, in regards to how that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll piggyback just to say that in my mind's eye, kind of how I see things are very like systemic and generational, right? It's cultural, it's socioeconomical. What you're saying is, as you know, indoctrination, whether it's faith and religion or something like that, just even in the latter two, you're taught here is how to think, here is what we want for you, here is what this person wants for you. And then you kind of go through life just doing, right? Kind of like a soldier marching in the army. You have your direct order. You do not stray from the formation. And I'm thinking back, you know, the last 100 years of American history. I mean, we can take it all the way back to, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, where when civilizations were first forming, like you have all these philosophers and thinkers and works we still listen to and you know, hear and adapt and all those things. But this just might be the human condition of, there's not many of us because we are, what's the word I want? Because we are part of the animal kingdom, right? There is that herd mentality. There is that we have to stick together in order to survive. And that obviously goes back to the very beginning. And so when that is so indoctrinated just in your genetic makeup, you know, makes sense why there are so many people who don't have the like aha light bulb moments of, this is just always how it's been done.
Yeah.
You know, like if we had $1, Alex, for every time we heard that, right? Like, this is just the way it is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We're doing ourselves, our mind, our body, everything a disservice because we don't even know what it could be like. Because again, if no one before us in our family line, whatever, has done the work, then we're living in that systemicness of, great, I'm the black sheep of the family trying to better myself or do something, right? And it's necessarily not in any kind of bad way, but you kind of start separating yourself from the pack. And that's where now we live in, like, we're not saying we're better, not at all. We're just more aware and we're making a conscious effort to not do what has been done before.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's because it's in our DNA. But those counter intentions, it's just in our DNA from, as you said, many, many generations and cultures that we grew up in. And as soon as, the black sheep in the family is a person that's questioning the DNA. Right, of the whole culture, and
it's not as easy as like I'm questioning like the family and like what's going on. It's like it is those bigger, broader, like we're really going to peel this onion layer back.
Yeah,
because when you look at it, it's like, yeah, why have things always been this way? Why do we always do things this way? I haven't thought for myself in 25 years. You know what I mean? Or like when's the last time that I had a thought that was my own, not being filtered through the lens of this is what I'm supposed to say. This is how I'm supposed to think. This is what I'm supposed to do. And you see that in a general way with both male and female. You also see that in very specific ways for both genders and then multi-genders as we're growing and learning into ourselves. Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Couldn't agree more. And what you just, the thing that you brought up is how many thoughts are our own individual thoughts. And that's, and how do you know and how do you don't know? You know, so what is it? Someone goes, one of the definitions of stupidity is when you're so confident that you think it's your thought.
That's good. I've never heard that before. That's good. I think for me, now that you say that, whenever I have a thought that I know is not me, is I can see it like it's the message is like typing itself out in my mind. And my first thing is like, wow, that's really good. There's no way it's mine.
Yeah.
Like I would have loved to, like maybe one day, right? But I'm like, I'm seeing it like on the screen. And I was like, no, that's really good. But like, nope, I can't take credit for that.
Well, the interesting thing, like the more I've delved into consciousness, because this is my big, huge thing in life right now is consciousness. Where does it begin? Where does it end? Is there a beginning and is there an ending, or was it always there in the way that it is? And we're not here to produce more consciousness. We're here to ascend to the next level of consciousness, to the next frequency. And when you hear Dr. Goswami talk about there's infinite possibilities happening, the infinite waves of possibility, you've probably heard of that one. And as soon as you look at one thing and turn it into a particle, all those other waves collapse. And for me, that makes so much sense because we can only view things in one frequency. So when we're actually looking at a certain thing, we're seeing it for that frequency in which we are emitting into life. So we're actually attaching ourselves to that frequency. And then all the other possibilities, all the other frequencies are not there. It's just the way we tune into a radio station, it's the way we to tune into any frequency. We only hear one radio station at a time, unless we have two radios put on at the same time, which we can actually do inside as well. When we're scattered in our thinking, we're all over the place. But when we're focused in, we're actually focusing on one frequency. Now, how many frequencies are there? We don't know. As we said, there's an infinite source of frequencies. All we need to do is tap into the one that we want to focus on. Whether we thinking that we're not focusing on it or not, that's what we're doing at any moment. We're focusing on a certain frequency. Now, if you start thinking about that, does anyone really invent things, or do we just discover that if I put this and this together, this happens? I've just discovered it. I didn't invent it. It was already there. It's all part of the universal makeup. The universal makeup was there from the beginning. It was there it's always going to be there. So therefore, everything is already there. It always was, always is, and always will be. It's only up to us to discover what that is. And we put our limitations within ourselves thinking it can't happen because we think we can't do it. So therefore it's impossible, not just for us, but for everybody else. And everybody else is crazy to think that it can be done. And, it's pretty amazing. I think it was the late 1800s where all the patent offices, the offices in the US, they closed them down because they said everything that needs to be invented has been invented, right? And then Einstein comes along with his law of relativity, and all the patent offices open back up again because it's like, wow, hang on a second. And think about it, from the late 1800s to now, how many things we've discovered.
And
And
I even wonder too, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I even wonder too with, going back to our early times of civilization, are we inventing, are we observing, in our caveman era, who had the download to know what A plus B equals fire? You know what I mean? Like, were we hardwired to hunt and gather and defend and take care of, to nurture? And I think that kind of just is in our physiological makeup already. So when you say it was already there, we didn't just pull this stuff out. We pulled it from within for sure. And there's the saying, like, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just how do we flip the coin to have multiple sides of the same thing? So I really like that take where it is really about discovery, because everything that has been invented, like, there's a source.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it really is just, how do we tap into that source to make it to fit our lives now? Because what worked in the 1800s is outdated. You know what I mean? Like, we have moved so far beyond just the fact that we can talk from two sides of the globe. They hadn't even, we'd have to sail on a ship, right?
We're tuning into a frequency, aren't we? We've discovered how frequencies work. These are, so now we're tuning into the same one right now, and here we are. Talking to each other live.
That's right.
To a little camera.
Which is, it's just so wild. Like, so this show will come out this episode will come out in the middle of August, but just in July, America celebrated 250 years of being a country. And I'm like, 250 years is nothing. Like, to look where we started and to look where we are.
Yeah.
I mean, technological advances, medical advances, it is just like we have all been tapping into some frequencies here or trying to, again,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes I think we struggle so hard to reinvent the wheel when it's really not. We make it more complex than it needs to be.
We
Right.
certainly do.
We do that. We add to the stress. The stress just lives in our bodies. It does other things. We're taking,
It
tablets
does.
and other things to help cure those symptoms without getting to the root. Right. And so it's you can see that. It's
Yeah.
almost like I liken self-awareness to a car and to a windshield where you didn't know how badly you couldn't see until you started whitewashing the grime
Yeah.
off the window, right? It's like
Exactly.
you saw that whole time, but until that layer of film or dirt, dust, whatever was kind of cleaned off by you clicking a button that your car was already programmed to do,
Yeah.
now you can wow, that is a clear picture of the sky. I see the road in front of me, pick your favorite landscape, but that whole thing is it's always been there. We've always had the ability to see better physically, mentally, emotionally than we know we can.
Yes. Totally agree. And I'm so glad that the way you put things is different to the way I put things, but we're saying the same thing, which is awesome. And I love that. I love that about our unique, as I said, fingerprints, because we're here to explain things to the world in the way that we explain them, and it makes so much sense, especially when we get together like this, and a lot of the times in that collective, because it shows us we are in the same frequency. And there's so many people in this world in that same frequency that are here to help lift the consciousness of all of humanity. And we say it in different ways, we express it in different ways, which is awesome because there's different people that will hear things in a different way, and we need to all get together like this to be able to show, hey, all you're going through in your life is your unconscious projection. And if we can help deal with those unconscious counter intentions, then you can really be yourself in this world. Now, we don't need more clones of different people. We need more of unique individuals out there, which is why we're here. We're all here to be our own unique self, and we're here to help each other out. And once we see that, we can live coherently instead of living in conflict, thinking that this person's better than me, that person's beneath me, and all this madness that we've been indoctrinated in thinking. There's nobody that's less or more valuable than another person. We all have the same makeup. It's just the way we view ourselves. And this is where I like to see it, I call it the evolution economy, which is the economy of the world. If we can really focus that the most important thing about humanity is their attention, which is why marketers pay so much money, is to grab your attention, right? Your attention is the most valuable thing, where you place your attention, or as we say, where you pay attention. Okay, that's the true economy right there. And once we start seeing that nothing is valuable until you think it's valuable. Otherwise, it's not valuable. It can be just a piece of metal, a piece of plastic. It's only valuable because we put the value onto it. And if the marketing is really well, it shows how something that's 50 cents to make can cost you $2,000 to sell because you're putting the value, and now everybody's perceiving it as valuable. It's your attention that's put the value there. Nothing else has put the value there. Okay, it's the attention. And once we start seeing that that's the most valuable commodity that we have is ourselves, then the more we can lift people up, the more we can start seeing that economy, currency is that. Are we placing our attention into what's truly valuable, or are we just putting it into distractions of life? Because a lot of the times people put more money towards distractions than they do to things that are truly valuable to them. Quite interesting. And that's how I see the evolution economy, is that the more we evolve in our consciousness, the more we're going to be paying attention to things that are greater. And to do that, I honestly believe, being great at what you do, placing so much value in what you do, that you become a master at what you do, then by default, the next level is that you become a mentor. And that's what, that's my whole work right now, is to help people really value themselves as whatever practitioner that there are. That so much so that their work is the most valuable thing, that what you do to build the fruit for everybody else is so valuable that when you put all your attention, you become a master at it. So much so that inside the next level is that you want to go out there and teach other people how to do that as well. And that's what the Mentors Academy has always been is about, is lifting that person's internal signal, really being focused, being able to communicate that signal, and then becoming a master mentor for other people to do the same. And by doing that, people like ourselves and all the amazing people around the world are the next elders of the world, which the world is craving for, because elders have been completely smashed down and devalued, and all these commodities and trinkets have been gods for people. I need the new phone, I need the new this, I need new technology, and the elders have been completely squashed. But the people are craving for it. You can see it in our youth. They're craving for that mentorship. To a certain point, even like Dan, you've probably seen Dan Pena. He's brutal in the way that he teaches. And there's a lot of people that are craving that as well, because they haven't been disciplined in their life. And we all need discipline. Every single one of us need the discipline, because it shows us how to stay focused in our task. A lot of people see it as a bad thing, but a lot of people are even craving that because they're not getting any sort of mentorship in their life.
Yeah. Alex, that's so good. Well, we could talk all day, and this is
We
just
can.
the start. We're going to organize another meeting of the minds here.
Sounds
your
awesome,
time and
Michaela.
your wisdom and attention has been invaluable. So thank you so much for sharing this on the show. As we are wrapping up here, Alex, you kind of alluded to a little bit with mentorship, but what is your next chapter? How do you see your story unfolding?
I see my story unfolding with what I like to call global architecture, which is being with others that are here to architect the next conscious evolution of life. And that's how I see myself unfolding in the next the next chapter of my life, however long that lasts, I'm not sure. But global architecture is my next focus, in lifting those mentors into understanding an evolution economy, which takes them now to inspiring others to become global architects as well. So it's a whole different way of looking at global consciousness to lift all of humanity, not just our individual selves.
That's so good. Alex, thank you so much for your time today. Pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on, Michaela. Look forward to our next chapter.
Thanks for listening. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, give it a rating and review while you're at it. It really goes a long way. And check out the show notes for all the ways to stay connected with me and our guests. Until the next episode.